Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I am doing a show on March 14th. This recording will be on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Please make sure you subscribe to all the channels so you are informed of all the content that I make. Thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. If you like the content, please share the links. Ask your social media to follow me. You can follow me on X, on GETTR, on Substack, and Buy Me a Coffee, TikTok. Lots of ways to watch my content. You can also listen to or watch my content on my website under broadcast. You can also read generated news that's published on my website under broadcast paper. So thank you for joining. Greatly appreciate it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great products that I offer. Some of the products that I have that are really important for your skin are the structural nano silver soaps. You can get it in peppermint and also in lemongrass. These structural nano silver soaps will help with your pores and neutralize. Really important. Use them every day to help the health of your skin. And in terms of the cold season and the allergy season, we're moving towards the allergy season. Please get the drops and the lozenges that I have. You can get it in Manuka honey, in orange splash, vitamin C, and the drops you can get in blueberry, cherry flavor, and also in honey and lemon. Have a few bags to your household. Have some at work. You never know when you need it. But the moment you have that throat irritation, take them right away. It will help to neutralize and mitigate the problem. You want to do that right away before you start getting an infection. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the lozenges and the drops. Be prepared. You never know when you need them. Make sure you use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, with that, I want to start talking about the breaking news that happened last night. Kharg Island was hit by the United States. Trump mentioned that all the military targets were hit. The oil reserves on the island, this is in the northern part of the Persian Gulf. This island is owned by Iran. It is a major oil port. 95% of the oil for Iran is ported out of that area. Now, what is interesting is that the U.S. oil companies, back before the revolution in the 70s, the oil companies, I think it's Aramco, actually built up that island reserve and pipeline. But when the revolution took place, it was taken over by Iran, and American oil companies were kicked out. So this is similar play that's taking place with Kharg Island compared to what happened in Venezuela. Venezuela had their oil industry built up by American companies, and then a revolution happened. It was taken over, and the American companies were kicked out. In Venezuela, it was socialism. In Iran, it was this theocratic Islam regime that took it over. All right. So with that said, there is a similarity with this oil play. The oil reserves there depends on the numbers that you get, but I think there's about 80 million barrels of oil of reserves on the island. 80 million, 80 million, I think it's 80 million barrels of reserve, maybe 100 million. I think the throughput for that region recently has been about 1.5 million barrels a day. Right before the actual hit on Iran by the United States, they were pumping out approximately 3 million barrels of oil a day to ship to China. All right. So maybe maxing out at about maybe 6 million barrels a day, assuming that everything is all the piping and that whole infrastructure is updated. It probably could double that level of flow. So there's a lot of oil in Iran. All right. Now, why is Trump doing this? One could say that he's going to control the island and he's going to control the oil, and that oil is going to be basically managed by an American company. Similar to, what he wants to do with Venezuela. That's one aspect to it. Another is it's a 100% chokehold. So tankers are flowing through the strait, but it's only Iranian tankers. And it's not that many, but some energy is flowing to China. So by cutting it off, it 100% prevents China from getting oil. So this is somewhat of a shot over the bow by the United States to show China, we can control your energy. So you be careful about what you do to Taiwan. Okay, so there's a geopolitical play here with Kharg Island. Now, because the strait for other vessels are shut down, the United States is using this as a bargaining chip or leverage on Iran to keep the strait open. Or Trump stated that maybe he'll destroy the oil. If he destroys the oil, the probability of him destroying the oil is low. Why? Because energy prices will radically go up. Probably $10 a barrel or more, $15 a barrel. And it's trading, Brent crude's trading at about 100, slightly above 100 right now as of this recording. So if he hits the oil and it goes up in smoke and it burns up, then he's going to have higher energy prices and more problems domestically. Because a lot of the domestic rhetoric that's coming from the electorate, the Congress, and also mainstream media is the high gas prices. Okay, so with that, the probability of him knocking out the oil is low. The probability of him controlling the oil once the regime falls and having American oil companies coming in, because you have to remember, Iranian oil infrastructure has been degrading because of the sanctions. All right, the flows weren't as much, and so they couldn't do the reinvestment because it was on the black market. So even though they were selling to China, they weren't selling as much of the oil as they could. So because of costs, because of inflation in the country, lack of investment, because of the sanctions, their industry has degraded for the oil industry. Not as much as, let's say, Venezuela. Venezuela didn't reinvest, and major rehaul of the energy production and piping and all this, right? And it takes time to build that up. So there's going to need to be investment into Iran. American companies are going to be coming in. If they show stability in the region, if it shows that there is a government that's law-abiding and that is more aligned with Western ideals and not Islamic ideals, then you're going to see American oil companies coming in and taking advantage of that situation. Now, Iran, if the deal is done properly, good flows of cash can go to Iran to help support the government and to reboot their economy. Because they're not just an oil country. They have a lot of educated people, so they can have a more diversified economy compared to, let's say, Venezuela. All right. So there's a great opportunity for a constitutional republic to be booted up in Iran. But you got to knock out the IRGC, and you have to knock out completely the theocratic regime. And supposedly the theocratic regime is still holding on. Now, the IRGC has dug in, so the United States is going to have to hit them harder and potentially have troops on the ground. Now, at the same time, last night, it was telegraphed that there was 2 news streams that were coming in. One said 2,500 Marines and the USS Tripoli, and then there's another news stream that stated from Fox that it was going to be 5,000 Marines and 3 different Navy vessels, and one of those Navy vessels was the USS Tripoli. So I'm not sure what the real story is. Is it 1 ship with 2,500 Marines or 3 ships with 5,000 Marines? I suspect that if it's the 5,000 Marine option, that the Marines are going to take control of Kharg Island and control the strait and go in and hit the beach, hit the shoreline of Iran and control it, and then monitor the coastline for any potential of these. They have these small boats. The Iranians have these small boats where they can attack ships, and they are on jet skis. So the Marines can almost manage that region. That's what I think is happening here. All right, I could be wrong, but it takes approximately 14 days to go from Japan to the region. So a lot can happen in 14 days, as you know, because we're going into the 3rd week of this war. Now, another key point that's really important to pay attention to is a lot of the mainstream media. They're saying, "Oh, Trump didn't plan this out. It's all shoot from the hip, and there was no strategy." There's been a long-term plan to do this. And let me give you the reason why, where the data points are. Trump kept on saying that Iran couldn't have nuclear weapons. Trump also kept on saying that there's unfair trade practices that are taking place and that we need to bring back our manufacturing and build up our military and have decouple from China. Now, if you're looking at the world and assuming that the country, the United States, is going to go to war with China in the future, you have to build up your manufacturing, you have to build up your military, and you also have to show strength through deterrence against China to make sure they don't go into Taiwan. Unfortunately, we have degraded our Navy fleet over the decades, and we need to rebuild it. So we're stress testing the system. All right? So that's one point. Where they're stress testing the system and getting battle ready for a potential war with China. China's PLA has telegraphed in their white papers that they want Taiwan anywhere from 2027 to 2030. All right? The United States military is preparing for a war with China. China needs energy. Where does the energy come from? Iran and Russia. Most of the Russian energy is transported between July and October through the Northern Passage. Why July to October? Because the rest of the year it's frozen. All right. So not all of their energy is from that, but the most of the energy that they get is from Iran. And maybe some other pipelines coming in, some other trading through LNG. My understanding is China has a lot of coal, but they're getting LNG from other countries. But the point here is that oil, a big part of their energy portfolio, is coming from Iran. Okay, so if you hit Iran, then the medium and heavy crude supplies will be cut off because of the Strait of Hormuz. Because these refineries are designed to take certain types of feedstock. Heavy crude, light crude, medium crude, right? They have to have a certain grade of crude oil. There's different types. So for PADD 3, which is the southern part of the United States, our refineries need heavy crude. And they can also take in some of this medium Middle Eastern crude. Well, if you have a war in the Middle East and oil flows are cut off, you have to make sure that your feedstocks for PADD 3 in the United States don't shut down. That you have enough feedstock that you're not shutting down the refineries. All right. So you have to take out Venezuela first. And I've been saying Venezuela is the first piece of the war with China. The second piece is Iran. And so when people keep on saying, oh, there was no plan for this, and no, there's a grand strategy here. There's and the mainstream media is not smart enough to see this. Okay. Now, you can't hit Iran until you secure heavy crude. The United States doesn't make heavy crude. We import it. We import it, medium crude, from the Middle East, but we also get heavy crude from Canada. We make some heavy crude, but not most of it's light sweet crude. Our oil refineries are fine-tuned in PADD 3 and PADD 2, so Midwest and the South, to take the heavy crude from Canada or from other countries. Secure the heavy crude with Venezuela. We've done that. In addition, we blocked off 2% of the oil that's shipped to China by controlling Venezuela. So we get two things out of taking over Venezuela. Control of 2% of their oil supply for China, and we have secured heavy crude for feedstock into our refineries for PADD 3 and PADD 2. All right? Now you hit Iran. Why? Destroy the regime, knock out their military, stop their funding of the proxy wars that have been going on for decades, get back control of the oil, create more peace in the region, but also be aligned with a country that we can deal with, that if we have a war with China, we can cut off their oil. We can cut off the oil supply to China. So China's only method of major crude is from Russia. Now the question is, will we align with Russia before we hit China? Somehow, maybe make a deal with Putin, or maybe destroy Putin's regime? Who knows? There are a lot of hawks in the Council of Foreign Relations, the CFR, that want to knock out Russia. So that's one strategy to do that, or to make a deal with Putin and have him align more with the West and have a two-front war with China. That would probably be a better option. But don't think that Venezuela and Iran are separate. They're part of a grand strategy. In addition, it's not about Venezuela and Iran. Tactically, it is. But strategically, it's about getting control of China. So let's go back into the details of Kharg Island. It has a lot of oil. It's 95% of Iranians' export. So when you chokehold that, they get no money. And it's used as a leveraging point to open up the strait. And China is going to say, we need the oil. All right? And they're going to put pressure on Iran to make a deal. But the IRGC is probably going to be dug in because they know it's an existential threat. And the United States is going to have to knock out the IRGC. And when that happens, then we're going to have to reboot their economy. I think that it should be energy revenues helped by the IMF and the World Bank to stabilize their currency and stabilize their economy. Have a group of 5 nations of the West come in and help with the constitutional republic, have fair elections, and have them brought into the orbit of the United States, where Iran is a child of, the Iranian government becomes a child of the United States. We give birth to a new constitutional republic. Now, that's what I think should happen. Now, what happens could be totally different. But the point here is that it's about defanging Iran, controlling the oil supply so it reduces the optionality for China. Now I'm going to play some videos giving other media perspective, but the bottom line is this: no one is talking in the terms that I'm talking in. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the magnesium and zinc. This will help to boost up your immune system, also increase the efficacy of D3, and help with brain function. Vitamin C and magnesium boosts up the immune system, helps with brain function, and improves your skin. Now, all right, let's listen in to DW on their Iran war update. U.S. strikes Kharg Island.
Mission, or simply take pride in maintaining your own cars. Harbor Freight offers quality auto tools to meet your every need at prices that can't be beat. Harbor Freight, your automotive vet.
Hi there, welcome to our live coverage of the war on Iran. As we enter a 3rd week of the joint Israeli and US strikes, the big question today, in light of what the US is doing right as we speak, is the US military actively planning to put boots on the ground on Iranian soil?
Yes.
Well, this is what they've been doing in the last 24 hours from the air, striking Iran's oil called the Kharg Island. Donald Trump has claimed that the island's military targets were obliterated, that its oil infrastructure has been left alone for now. In the Berlin studios, hi, I'm Anthony Howard.
Hi everyone, I'm Jared Reed. Before we go to our military expert, I'm going to show you exactly where this Kharg Island is, and we can bring up Google Maps. Now, it sits in the Persian Gulf, north of the Strait of Hormuz, which you can see down here. So it's about 25 kilometers from the Iranian mainland. It's quite a small island, just around 20 square kilometers in size. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on that. For some context, it's about Manhattan, the island of Manhattan is about 3 times as large as Kharg Island. Despite this tiny size, it's the main terminal for Iran's oil exports, so hugely important to Iran's economy, and it's the oil reaches the island through pipelines from the oil fields on the mainland and refineries on this island. So we can see some of them here. They process 90% of Iranian crude oil exports, most of it bound for China.
Right. So the US media is widely reporting that the US is sending amphibious troops into the Gulf region at the same time this is happening. So with that, we bring in our first guest for the day. Marina Miron is our military expert. We talk to Marina a lot on DW since Russia's invasion because there's been a lot to talk about, Marina, and especially in the last 2 weeks now, of course, with Iran. I wonder, have you been following the US media reports that I mentioned about these amphibious forces headed for the region and the overnight strikes? Your first thoughts, if you could.
Good afternoon. Yes, of course, I've been following the news and the announcements made by both sides, the United States and Israel on one hand. And
now she's a geopolitical expert, especially in the Middle East. She was asked to talk many times on mainstream media about what was going on with the Israeli war in Gaza and their fight in Lebanon against Hezbollah. All right. So she knows her subject matter. She's a Ph.D. All right. But let's see what she has to say, because I have a feeling that she doesn't go into the grand strategy that I mentioned at the very beginning of this show. All right. But we'll see. I haven't seen this video at all. You're going to get my knee-jerk reaction, but I am sick and tired of all these experts not getting it right. But maybe she will. Maybe I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. But I doubt. I have a very strong suspicion that a lot of these experts are going to get it wrong. They got it wrong during COVID. They got the damn thing wrong during the tariffs. The experts, the economists out there got the tariff issue totally wrong. The money managers out there during the tariff issue, they said to not go into U.S. equities or U.S. bonds and to move your money overseas into emerging markets or into Europe or Asia. That didn't turn out very well. Everyone's going back to the United States. The dollar's going up. Now, because of inflation, because of the high energy prices, there's a tick up in the yield of the 10-year. Equities are going down, but this is a time to buy. You never bet against the United States, ever, okay? And it's not just Dr. Paul Cottrell saying it. J.P. Morgan in the late 1800s and early 1900s stated that. Never bet against the United States, because she will always surprise you. Now, let's see. But I'm going to dissect this really, really deep here. All right? And this is her domain. This is her educational domain.
And Iran has, for instance, threatened to strike UAE ports if anything happens, because, as you have correctly pointed out, this island is of strategic importance for Iran's economy. And any damage to its terminals, to its infrastructure, not military infrastructure, obviously, would set back Iran decades, because the Iranian economy could effectively collapse. And so the fact that the United States is now considering potentially taking the island, we don't know if they're going to destroy that infrastructure. And as I said, that would have a major impact, not just on Iran, but on the United States as well, because of the oil prices. And we're seeing a major energy crisis, not even comparable to the one when the war in Ukraine started, when Russia invaded Ukraine. And everybody is bracing to see what is going to come, because it's not quite clear what the overall objective is. Is it to leave the infrastructure of the island intact and just send in the forces? The other question is, why would it be announced? Because such operations usually...
He's announcing it because he's using it as leverage to open up the strait. Now, the chances of him knocking out the oil is low, maybe 10% chance. 90% chance is to take it, have the Marines control the strait, open it up, and the flow of that oil is going to be controlled by the U.S. And then it creates a geopolitical issue between the United States and China. And what this does is it chokeholds the funding for the IRGC and eventually degrade until they die off. Now the question is, will the people of Iran rise up to the occasion and have a democracy, have a constitutional republic? Or will they go to some sort of monarchy that's tied to the Shah? Or will they want this theocracy? Now, if you pay attention to who are the people that are protesting, there are two major types in Iran. This is broad brushing it, right? The ones that are against the theocracy and the IRGC, and the ones that are for the theocracy. The religious versus the secular. Now, the secular are very educated. There's a lot of them. And they want peace. So if we can get enough of them to galvanize and move forward and to push back against the IRGC and the theocratic regime, we will literally have democracy in that region. Now that's the harder part. Knocking out the boats, knocking out missiles and drones, that's the easy part. The hard part is making sure that the secular part of the society is galvanized to want to fight for a constitutional republic and to abort the theocratic regime. Now, what's Trump doing? Trump's basically saying, hey, I just knocked out all the military targets on the island. The Marines are coming in. There's 5,000. They probably will they'll be bifurcated into 2,500 to take the island and 2,500 to hit the shores and control the strait. And when that happens, the United States is in complete control of the oil. 100 million barrels of oil on the island for the reserve. So he's telegraphing to the IRGC and the theocratic regime, all right, we just knocked out your military on the island. And oh, by the way, the Marines are coming in 14 days. You going to make a deal? Are you going to open up the strait? Are you going to back off? Are you going to surrender? If not, this is going to get a lot worse. That's what he's doing. Now, this is her domain. She should be able to say this.
Trump is sending in the forces today, and tomorrow or tonight they will be landing on the island. Such operations take time to prepare, and the first preparatory ground would be the informational ground and intelligence. And
if they're taking the island, they're using Delta Force. Where's the Marines then? So that doesn't make much sense. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about them boots on the ground on the island in the near term, meaning like the next 24 to 72 hours. I haven't heard anything on that. All I heard was Marines coming in. It'll take 7 to 14 days. and they were traveling on a boat. Now it could be that they're flying in and they're just telegraphing the boats are coming, but it's really they're flying in. Who knows? It's probably smart to have them flying in, but if they take the island, they're using local Marines in the area, or Delta Force to come in, maybe Navy SEALs, some sort of special operations to control the island. That would be interesting if it happens in 24 hours. I'm thinking that they would take the island, boots on the ground within the 14-day mark.
Ensuring that the Iranian side has as little control, including cyber control of the island as possible. And so it's interesting to see what is going to happen. Is this a bluff? Is this a way to say, well, we can hold the island hostage in a sense, and if you surrender from the U.S. Perspective, if Iran surrenders, then we will let it go, maybe, if you allow
the United States
transit through the Strait of Hormuz. So
the moment we are on that island, there is no way that Trump is going to let go of that oil. It's going to use it as leverage to make sure that the IRGC and the theocratic regime is aborted. It's kicked out. There is no way that he's going to say, I'm going to take the island, and then if you open up the strait, I'll give it back to you. No, he's not going to do that. And not only that, he's probably on the phone with Aramco. Hey, you remember when the Iranians kicked you out? Well, you're coming back in. Get ready. Get on a plane. You're back in business. That's what's going to happen.
Going to happen either way. Even the news of this are already affecting the prices, and there are a lot of skeptics, including in the U.S. administration, saying it's time to pull out of this because it's not going to lead to anything good. And the deeper you get into this war, the worse it's going to get. Because for the Trump administration, of course, it's important to look at the domestic politics as well, and at the upcoming midterm elections.
Before Anthony,
Just you, building your app on base 44. Describe it. And it's real. One thought leads to more thoughts. Layer by layer, taking shape. When you need your tools, bring them in. It's just slick. Okay, take it up a notch. Create something.
Before Anthony asks you another question, I just want to invite our audience also to please get involved and send us in your comments and questions. Today, we'll be able to put those to Marina and ask her on your behalf anything you'd like to know.
And I want to jump back into what you were alluding to there, Marina. It comes to the timing of this, which is fascinating. If it does take American forces a week to get in position, how much more difficult does it get the longer they wait? You ask yourself the question, why now? The more time Iran has to get ready in these positions, or on the coast, or nearby, or in the strait, generally speaking, to potentially mine waters or booty traps.
He needs to telegraph to the IRGC and to theocratic regime that he means business, and he's going to take away their prized possession, the reserves, and 95% of their oil export. He's also telegraphing to the world that it's getting close to opening up the straits, and not to bid up the oil too much, because when it opens, oil is going to fall a lot. Now, if you pay attention to me, you can make a little bit money tactically with oil going up, but you'll make a lot of money when oil goes down. So why don't you make sure that you subscribe to all my channels and watch, listen, Pay attention each of these days. I'm telling you how to make money on what's going on here. Do you want to be a victim? Do you want to complain about the oil price? You'll make more money if you pay attention to me. You'll make more money doing what I'm doing. And you won't have to worry about your higher costs of living because of this crisis. Because you'll make way more money. So stop whining, get in on the battlefield, and fucking participate. All right? Stop whining about it.
Whatever that may be, how much more difficult does it get the longer the US waits to undertake such a major operation like this?
Well, my assumption is that the US is already ready.
Right.
That it could happen anytime now because, as I said, it takes time to prepare, and you don't announce an operation in the last moment. Maybe it's a way to give Iran a chance, or to the new Ayatollah a chance to say, okay, we don't want our strategic asset to be touched. We want the infrastructure to be left intact, and therefore to force Iran's hand on opening the Strait of Hormuz, and not to give Iran the possibility to prepare, because that would make no sense. That would be, even if Iran doesn't have the military capacity, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps still could do enough damage. I mean, they don't need any sophisticated weaponry. They have drones. They have small boats in large numbers, which could complicate operations. And therefore, I think that the operation is probably maybe even underway now as we speak.
That
it remains to be seen. It is my assumption why this is being.
With what she's saying here, that is some good information. You knock out the targets through the Air Force, maybe even the Navy. You destroy the military targets, and then you have special forces come in to take control of the island. But special forces aren't designed to do it forever, and you need a more robust military force to hold the island. And that's probably why the Marines are coming in. But the Marine operation is also probably to control the strait. So Trump may be right. And he's been telegraphing this is going to take 4 weeks. At the end of the month, we may actually have the strait open. If this all works out, oil is going to crash by the end of the month. Now, what's interesting is that I'll have to double check on the actual contract switching, but I think it's the third week of Thursday, the third Thursday of the month, when the contract ends and goes into the next month. So there's some dynamics going on there between traders moving into the next month's contract for oil. I think special operations are going to be on the island to hold it. And then the Marines come in.
Announced now to give Iran the last chance.
Right. Before Jared brings up the map again, perhaps, I think it's really important that we sort of understand that where this area is. Even if you do say the US is ready now, I wonder about the location of the island.
All right. Before we do that, let me just plug a couple products. Please help support the work that I do. I do these videos for free to help you to improve your health and also to make money by the news, all right? Omega-3. This is going to help with your cardiovascular health. How? It brings down inflammation and helps to control your lipid profile. When that happens, you're reducing plaque formation. That's really important. Take it every day. Omega-3, super important. Another great supplement that helps with cardiovascular health is vitamin D3. The vitamin D3 is dual purpose. It's going to help with gene expression. It's a gene expression cofactor, super important for cells to work properly. If they are infected, the cells are infected, it helps to get the cells to go into apoptosis. That's why you take vitamin D3 when you're not feeling well, when you're sick. Vitamin D3 also helps to absorb calcium. So if you do resistance training and take in calcium, you're going to build denser bone. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin D3. And neural stacks, all right, are really important to improve your brain function. Clarity factor gets rid of that brain fog and allows you to concentrate. Take this every day. Make sure you drink it with filtered water, but take it every day. And what you will notice is that your memory will improve. You'll be able to concentrate better, and you will be able to think faster. So please go to my store, get the clarity factor, take it every day.
The USA is trying to draft a plan to get in there or do whatever it is that they're going to do. How much more difficult does it make it that Kharg Island is so deep up in the Gulf in terms that they have to plan for things to go right, but if it goes wrong, to get any troops back out again?
We're flying over Iraq. Hello, guy. We're not just going deep into the Persian Gulf. It's not just Navy. Hell, the Navy can shoot a missile from Oman, the Gulf of Oman, onto Kharg Island. So it's not just focusing on where the island is way north within the Persian Gulf. But you got to realize that our Navy can shoot missiles from the Gulf of Oman into the Persian Gulf. Plus, we could fly over Iraq and hit. So there's many vectors that we can use to actually go in and attack the island. But if you're talking about an amphibious unit or airborne, there's a lot of different ways that we could do this. Maybe we can launch from the shore of Iraq or Kuwait or Saudi Arabia. Or we go through the strait with the Navy up through the Persian Gulf, which is a little bit more risky. And that might be the reason why they need the Navy to take, you know, the Marines and the Navy to come in and slowly unclog that region. Airborne. They can drop there, have special forces come in, control the island to reduce the potentiality of a larger force coming in and getting hit. So they secure the island, they secure the region, and then they fly in because there's an airfield there. They can fly in and just drop off the soldiers. So there's a lot of different ways to do this.
Much more difficult is it given the location of the island so deep up into the Gulf?
And we can bring up the map as well, just to give our audience, just to give all of you a little bit more context.
Well, there is a
My work is easy because I use ClickUp. Here's how I keep track of all my tasks. I start by brain dumping everything I need to get done in a list view. Next, I set a priority and a due date to keep things on track.
Well, there is a possibility that the US might be deploying its troops from Kuwait, if you look at the map. So the US does have assets across the entire Middle East, and therefore it is not going to be so difficult in military terms for the US. Yes, it is a logistical challenge, certainly, but as I said, it depends on what the ultimate goal is. Is it to hold the island? Is it to destroy the infrastructure? If it was about destroying the infrastructure, then there would be no need for ground force for an amphibious assault. Excuse me.
That's true.
You would
That's true.
probably achieve that with precision strikes, given that Iranian air defenses, even if the island has layered air defenses, and there is still no specific information on what they have. Some sources argue that they have the Russian S-400s, for instance. Others say that the only kind of Russian Soviet prototype they have is Tor M1. And therefore, I think for the US, it wouldn't be problematic to hit the infrastructure there from the air without having to commit any troops. So depending on what the US is seeking to achieve there, and maybe they're not preparing to have Marines land on the island. As I said, it's all about, the fog of war and the deception. You don't announce these things. Maybe the campaign looks completely different. We don't know that, but let's say logistically the US could pull it off.
We have a question talking about strategy and what is supposed to be achieved here. InstaWarp has asked on YouTube, Trump is seemingly relying on Russian oil to offset current trade disruptions in the Middle East. And I guess this person's referring to Trump easing sanctions on certain oil products from Russia. This person's asking, is this a long-term strategy to pivot away from Iran's oil industry? What do you think?
They would like, thank you for asking, I greatly appreciate it. They would like for them, China would like to be able to diversify their oil suppliers. The problem is that a lot of the energy that's flowing to China is through the Northern Strait, through the Northern Passage. Well, that's only active for just a few months out of the year because it's frozen the rest of the year. But majority of the oil that China gets is from Iran. So they're gonna, they can't, they're not gonna be able to switch to Russian oil because of availability to supplant the actual Iranian supply. It's just not possible.
I'm not sure what the long-term prospect is. From my perspective, it's not just about Iranian oil, it's about Iranian oil going to China. And so it is, of course, very beneficial for the Trump administration to weaken China. And we know that China needs oil, specifically because China is using different energy resources for powering the technological revolution that's underway in China. And China is seeking to outcompete the United States in this particular sphere. Making energy much more costly for China is one way for the US to kind of level the playing field. And so I think it's not so much about Russia per se, whereas, again, what is the US policy towards Russia in terms of the entire geostrategic picture? The Russians and the Americans will probably have something to discuss about the High North, for instance. Then again, I've also read that the OPEC Plus countries are going to pump more oil. So somehow this gap, if anything happens, will be filled, but the prices will be different. And I think that is a crucial factor. For now, the Russians will be benefiting from it, but I think it's more of a side effect of the Trump policy rather than a priority.
Yeah, we're having quite a few questions about China. Someone's asking how China is going to affect China. Marina's just explained that. Can you fact check this for us, Marina? Someone's written here, China will now have to buy oil in US currency again. What does that mean?
Well, what that means...
Meet your new favorite email design platform. Create stunning emails without touching a single line of code. With our
Well, when they're buying, if they can't buy Iranian oil, then they're going to have to buy Saudi oil, or they're going to have to buy oil from other producers, and that's going to be the petrodollar. That's why.
Means essentially is the maybe the greater aim, if you look at all the operations, including Venezuela, is to keep the US dollar in the game.
Exactly.
And since the war in Ukraine, we have seen a shift away, and we have seen India buying Russian oil, the shadow fleet, the so-called shadow fleet, right? They can operate, because of the sanctions, they found ways to operate outside of the dollar system.
Exactly.
And therefore,
Now think
I
about
think,
now think about this. Now think about this. We sanction a country like Iran. Certain countries want to get the oil from the Iranians. They can't because Iran can't use American dollars because the paper soldier, all right? The paper soldier meaning the American dollar and the ability to chokehold through the banking system and the way trade is done prevents sanctioned countries from using it. So other countries are going to have to try to circumvent that sanction. And the way they do it is that, well, we're just not going to use dollars. We're going to use some other currency so we can trade with that partner. So when people kept on saying, oh, the dollar's weakening, go away from the dollar, get the BRICS. You know, what it was is a means to circumvent the actual sanctions that the United States had on Iran.
administration, it might be one of the long-term aims is to ensure continued relevance of the US dollar on the world market. I'm not sure where China is going to buy its oil. If it buys its oil from Russia, it won't buy the oil in dollars.
She's wrong about that. She's wrong. Putin just telegraphed that he's trying to make a deal with Trump, saying that he wants to start using the American dollar again. Because he's starting to see that the BRICS are going to crash. With what we did in Venezuela, what we're doing in the Middle East, the BRICS are not as strong as people thought. She's wrong on that. They're going to
reach. It might as well offer something in exchange in terms of technology. We know that a lot of technologies that the Russians use for their unmanned systems are coming from China. So it's not clear whether this will force China to buy oil in US dollars.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Marina, just back to the
if they can find a supplier that will deal in a different currency, they'll do it. But most of the suppliers are going to be dealing in dollars. That's what's going to happen.
and the type of forces that the US are now sending in. Can you sketch us out a picture? I guess we got familiar with, to some degree, with the US style of operation that they used in Venezuela. Is that like what we're going to see here? We're not going to try and forecast if it happens and where it happens, but if they are to send in a force, the amphibious forces, is that what was used in Venezuela? And is that what is now being sent into the region?
No, it's totally different. It's totally different. It's totally different. The amphibious assault on the island most likely is going to be the Marines. All right? The Marines I don't believe the Marines were involved in directly. I thought it was all mostly Delta Force that were involved in Venezuela. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Special Forces actually, the first boots on the ground to control the island are Special Forces. And then the Marines come in and secure it for longer term. And the thing is that there's
the exact size.
and there's an analog to this in tanker wars during Operation Praying Mantis, when we were knocking out the oil rigs that were wired up for radar systems for Iran. Our special forces went in to knock them out. They would the rigs would be hit by the Navy, and then the Navy SEALs would come in on helicopters to finish it up.
I have not check the exact size, and I don't think that even what appears in the media will be the correct reflection for the reasons that of operational security, obviously. Therefore, it's difficult for me to draw a comparison, and it's very different because we're comparing apples with pears here. In Venezuela, the mission was completely different. But what I can say for sure is that before that force in Venezuela was sent in, a lot of background work has been done by the intelligence agencies on the ground in Venezuela as well to ensure the success of such operation.
And they heavily degraded the defense of Venezuela first. We know that Iran's defenses are degraded, but are they still way more capable than anything the US faced in Venezuela? Can Iran still put up a big fight on the island of Kharg?
It's a very...
On the PGA Tour, I trust only one caddy. On my lawn, I trust only one pro. It's me, right? Yeah.
It's a very good question because we have seen that Iran is very different. Killing Ali Khamenei has not crippled Iranian system. The people didn't take to the streets, and this operation wasn't over, meaning that the vertical control structure is still in place. Obviously, we see from the US reports that a lot of its military capabilities have been degraded. Many statistics have been posted in the reduction of strikes. But if you look at the Iranian media, it says exactly the opposite. So who is, in this information war where each side wants to portray things from their perspective to show how good they are and how they're winning, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, and I do assume that Iran retains enough asymmetric capabilities, cheap drones for one, in order to make things complicated, because the US is using very expensive equipment. And we have seen the best example of this kind of operation is the Ukraine SBU and KUR, so the Ukraine Security Services and Military Intelligence in the Black Sea. And we have seen what they managed to achieve with unmanned service vehicles like Maguro V5. And therefore, from an Iranian perspective, maybe they cannot militarily win this, but they can raise the cost. And by raising the cost in terms of life and equipment, this is going to raise the political cost, aside from the economic shock that we're experiencing. And this is the main target, erode the political will. And we've seen this throughout the past centuries when a militarily weak adversary faces a strong adversary, the war in Vietnam.
Marina, before we throw it back to the audience for more, and sorry to talk over the top of you there, just on that, we do our best to detect whether the US is under any strain in terms of their stockpiles. They give off the impression, for good reason, that their supplies are almost have no bottom to them. As Iran fights this asymmetric war, as we often hear, do you see any signs that the US is running out of patience, or there's a growing nervousness in Washington about the length of time? Are we getting to any point where anything that you read or...
The Democrats are going to say that Trump can do nothing right, and that's about it. But I don't think we've lost patience yet in terms of what's going on in Iran, because we haven't really felt the true effects of higher oil yet. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. If you can't sleep at night because of what's going on in the Middle East, maybe you should go to my store and get the Goodnight Formula. You should be taking the Goodnight Formula every night. Why? Because it allows you to get into 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep. It has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower to help you to detoxify your central nervous system, to be well rested, and to consolidate memory. It's super important to take. And by getting good sleep, you're slowing down the aging process. Digestive enzyme complex helps to break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids and reduce the load on your pancreas. Super important. It also has bromelain in this complex that helps to break up clots. And digestive enzyme complex has the proteolytic enzymes to break up glycoproteins, which is super important during the cold season. Olive leaf extract, dual purpose, helps to boost up your immune system and helps with your cardiovascular system. How? Brings down inflammation and helps you to control your lipid profile. And lastly, getting a good probiotic is super important. Good health starts at the gut. I have a powdered version of the probiotics and a VeggieCap version. Please go to my store, get either version, take it every day, and with taking a good probiotic, you're going to improve your nutrient absorption, your metabolism will improve, your brain function will improve, your skin will improve, and your immune system will improve. You'll bring down inflammation at the gut level. Super important. So please go to my store and get the probiotics. Let's continue.
In Washington is starting to reflect any sort of tension, any sort of nervousness about the length of time that these assets are being deployed in such high numbers.
Of course, there are tensions within the Trump administration, and one of Trump's advisors suggested to declare victory and get out.
Right.
Just yesterday or this morning, Ep40 reported on this. And so there is a concern that the US is using up a lot of ammunition, a lot of tomahawks that will be very expensive to produce, by the way, and take a lot of time. So let's say if something else happens in the world, the US might not have enough capability. And we have to look at the entire global picture. The Venezuela theater is still a little bit shady. We're hearing that there is a potential that Cuba will be next. We know the US is also active in Ecuador. And of course, we have the Middle East, we have Ukraine, could be Taiwan could be next, right? And so is this going to be a capability overstretch for the United States? And of course, if we think about the fact that the oil prices have risen, everything else will rise as well. Therefore, for the United States, there is a lot of nervousness because the Trump administration promised to lower the cost of living, but this is exactly the opposite of what is happening. And so you have different voices, specifically from the opposition, from the Democrats, saying this is a bad idea. This is costing a lot of money. This is not helping us at all, and it's quite politically damaging. So that's probably why we don't hear a very clear political aim articulated by the Trump administration, because they want to have enough room for maneuver in order to say, we won. Look, we have now killed the Ayatollah. He was really bad. And we did all the damage. We bombed Iran into Stone Age, so it will take maybe decades to recover, and we're out of there. And we'll sell our weapons, whatever we produce, to Israel if they want to continue this on. And of course, to the Gulf states, who now need more protection, obviously, because we have seen that they don't have the capability to defend against the likes of Shahed 136 drones.
We have a question, and you've been talking about the political costs of this, Marina. Someone's written, boots on the ground will be universally unpopular with the US public, but it's a clear threat to the new regime in Iran. They're asking what the role of diplomacy is going forward here, if there is one at all.
Boots on the ground.
You don't buy a mattress every day, so finding the right one matters. At Raymore & Flanagan, we make it easy.
Boots on the ground. Well, boots on the ground where, right? Iran is a very big country with a very difficult terrain. So let's just push the matter with the Kharg Island aside. If the US wants to deploy boots on the ground in Iran proper, what would the objective be? Because we have seen that in Iraq. That's probably one of the best examples. Get rid of Saddam, and what do you have then? You have a power vacuum, and different factions fighting for power, and whereas the US troops thought, well, our mission was successful militarily, it was successful. However, there was no clear.
Wait, there was a huge difference between Iraq and Iran. Iraq has never been really a strong country because of the three factions. So when you take out the big dog, then the factions will start to fight again. And it was Saddam who can, with an iron fist, kept the country together. Very similar to what was happening during the early China dynasty with Qin. All right, there was a lot of factions within China, and it took one major leader to bring them all together. All right, but Iraq didn't have as much of a secular and a educated population as the Iranians. So it's different. Now, there will be a power vacuum. That's true. And there will be infighting between the part of society that wants the secular Western culture, and you'll have part of the society fighting that wants the Sharia culture. But my understanding is that there are more, in terms of absolute numbers, the percentage of the population is more on the secular side than on the more orthodox side of Islam, of Shia Islam. So that's different than Iraq. But if we have boots on the ground in Iran proper, it's to degrade the IRGC to make sure that we can have, boot up some sort of democracy in Iran, and to not allow for a theocratic regime to take hold. And I suspect that Iran can rise to the occasion where Iraq had difficulties because of their lack of education and the sectarian violence, the sectarian issue of the three factions within Iraq. Iraq is a country really put together by Western powers in the early 20th century. It's not, I don't think it's natural. I don't think it's a natural formation or organic formation of the country. I think it was just forced together. And I think that's the difference. Iran, because of the geography, there are natural borders in the people. The composition of the people are different. Now, the question is that if we have boots on the ground and we go into urban warfare, what will it be like? And who knows? Who knows? What is surprising, and she mentioned it, is why the secular part of society hasn't risen up and protested.
Objective for what will happen after Saddam is gone. These people are not going to sort it out, and Iran is very fragmented in that way. For instance, it has a large portion of Azeri population as well. So it's not just one kind of Persian identity, if you wish. It's multicultural, if you will. They have Balukis, for instance, who also want their independence, and that's where Iran has been cooperating with Pakistan, because Pakistan has Balukis as well. They have the Kurds. And so what would the troops on the ground, what would their mission be? Because you cannot achieve something militarily if you don't have a clear political end state. And I don't see that at the moment. Inciting an uprising using the Kurds, will it work? We don't know. Will the Kurds be on board after their entire experience with Western forces? We also don't know. We remember Syria, and the Syrian Defense Force was also comprised of Kurds, of Syrian Kurds. In terms of what was the second part of the question?
It was whether diplomacy has any role at the moment or not at all.
No, none.
Diplomacy requires trust, or at least a degree of trust, and a credible mediator or mediators from both sides. And I think from Iranian perspective, after the 12-day war and after the recent negotiations in Switzerland, Iranians don't have any trust in the international system and towards the US, not at all, because Iran doesn't want to negotiate anymore, because from the Iranian perspective, they understand if they get to some sort of a ceasefire now, it's going to be only temporary before Iran will be attacked again. And so that's Iranian perspective. So they say, okay, great, we are going to fight a long war. We are going to go after eroding the political will, using maybe the proxy networks across the Middle East. There are also other proxy networks, by the way, in Latin America, also with ties to Iran, the Revolutionary Guard Corps. And of course, we don't know, it's all, as I said, very foggy, what role countries like North Korea, China, and Russia are playing, aside from what has been stated when it comes to sharing satellite intelligence and all that kind of stuff, because we know that China has been sending cargo planes to Iran. What they contain, nobody knows. So there is quite a lot going kind of in beneath the muddy water surface, but it's very difficult to say what degree of influence each of them will exert. And certainly for China, it will be interesting to covertly ensure that it keeps its oil supply from Iran.
Marina, brilliant as always, in lieu of knowing exactly what the...
In having Kharg Island in Trump's pocket, he can use it as a leveraging point against China. So if they're doing things nefarious, then maybe Trump could say, you want some oil, China, or not? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the lignans. This will help with your immune system and your endocrine system, bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, super important to take, slow down the aging process. And ashwagandha root brings down cortisol levels and blood glucose levels. This will also help with the cardiovascular health and your immune system, help to boost up that immune system. And by bringing down inflammation, you're also helping with brain function. So please go to my store, get the ashwagandha root and the lignans. I also have a great product that helps to relieve pain. Super strong relief, can help with tension headaches. You apply it topically. All right, so if you have a headache, put it on your temples, on your forehead, and on your neck muscles, and it will provide you relief from a headache. It also helps to relieve muscle aches and soreness and joint pain. So please go to my store and get the super strong relief. It's a topical product. You just apply it on your skin and you get relief within 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds. It's pretty fast. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Moves of the US forces might be. It's been great to do some mock strategy with you. Thanks so much for all the detail. Appreciate your time as always.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
We can speak to...
We have got to the point where literally anybody can build a fully working app without knowing how to code. This is Base 44. This is the first look at the current industry-leading AI app builder, and you wouldn't believe the kind of apps that people...
We can speak to Professor Sultan Barakat, Professor in the College of Public Policy at Hamad bin Khalifa University in Qatar. Welcome to you, Professor, and I understand you've had some kind of alert in the last hour, so we really are grateful that you have been able to speak with us and make the time for us on this stream. You've been hearing some of what Marina's had to say in the last 15 minutes or so. Is there anything you'd like to weigh in on at this point?
Well, just to say, I think in terms of the grand oil strategy that Trump seems to be pursuing, I think he's determined to make sure that
There's breaking news as of this recording. Trump urges UK and other nations to send ships to help secure key Strait of Hormuz oil trade route. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support the work that I do. All these videos are for free. Get the structural nano silver toothpaste. This will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, reduce inflammation, improve the health of your gum line, and neutralize. Super important, especially during the cold season. But this is the best toothpaste that you can get. There's nothing better. Has no fluoride. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get a few tubes of this toothpaste for your household.
Totally dependent on United States oil and gas. And this is, to me, seems central to his whole action over the last few months. He would like the Europeans, because they're closer to the United States, they're more stable economies, they're willing to pay the price he's asking for, and so on. And I think this should be factored into our understanding of what is going on globally. At the same time, he's wanting Europe to move away from the Russian oil and gas. But as you heard, is also opening the possibility for Russia, in order not to be too isolated, is opening the possibility for Russia to export oil elsewhere. And unfortunately, we at the Gulf here are going to be the people who pay the price for that. The market is not going to wait for the Gulf states to come back into their exporting capacity. Countries will look for alternative sources of energy. And if Russia is now able to supply, then China, and we know already India is looking into getting energy from Russia.
Let's unpack that a little bit. I mean, it seems a bit counterintuitive, right? If you're saying Trump is trying to bring Europe closer to the US by way of sidelining Russia, while at the same time easing these oil sanctions on Russia that mean more countries can buy oil from it and therefore give much needed money funneling Russia's way.
Yeah, well, it does sound a bit odd, but I think we need to look into the history of Trump and his relationship with Putin and Russia. And we shouldn't just look at this as an isolated episode. I mean, this is the whole thing is got roots for how it developed. But this is my impression so far. I think the Putin is set to gain out of this, and as much as Trump is.
You also mentioned China as well in your first answer, and most of the crude from Kharg Island is exported to China. So you think that's part of Washington's tactics here to kind of really hit the energy security of its one of its big rivals?
It is, but it's. I don't think he necessarily wants them to not have access to oil, but he would like them to have access according to his own terms. And I think the most damaging has been to the United States is the bartering that was taking place between be it China and Venezuela or China and Iran. And he'd like to bring an end to that, and he would like to push the Chinese to purchase oil in the international market, ideally using US dollars. And they probably will end up doing that anyway.
Yeah, and you were also mentioning too that all of this is going to impact the Gulf regions. Talk to us about the real nervousness there right now.
Well, I think in terms of expecting or thinking or predicting what Iran's reaction was going to look like, everyone is in agreement that many studies were done over the last few years, and all have suggested that this will be exactly the way Iran responds to any attack by the United States. The problem, I think, from a Gulf perspective, is that the United States was drawn into this by a narrow agenda of Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel. And they went for it without sufficient consultation with the Gulf states, who are main stakeholders, both because of their proximity to Iran, because of their shared economic vulnerabilities, even as partners to the United States. They were not involved in the decision. And in fact, they almost all recommended against it. But still, the United States went ahead with it without calculating carefully the
No, it's about taking a risk award analysis, a cost benefit ratio. To say that the United States just went in with no care for what the risks are, and there was no strategy. The beginning of this video, I said what the strategy was. It's about projecting hegemonic power against China. Please go to my store, the-studio.reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver gel. You can get it in the tube form or in the quick dispenser form, but use them the same way. Both are very high quality products. Put it on your hands, put it on your skin regularly as a regular skincare, topical skincare, to help to improve your skin. That's one way to use it. If you have a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn, put it on the lesion. It'll help to heal it about a third of the time quicker. And if you're not feeling well, or someone around you is not feeling well during the cold season, or something worse, like 2020, put it on your hands, around your eyes, around your ears, around your nose, around your mouth, lightly coat your nostrils. It'll stay active for 5.5 hours. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver gel. I also have a great product that will help to improve your joint health. Collagen will help to remodel your joints. It will help to use collagen 2, type 2, to remodel the cartilage, and ACAN to cushion the joint. It will also help to recruit glucosamine to remodel the cartilage, and recruit chondroitin to help with the cushioning of the joint. It also blocks enzymes that cause the erosion of your joint. It blocks MMP3 and MMP13, and it also blocks pain receptors that cause the joint pain, which is Ep4. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the collagen, and help to remodel your joint. Also, to help to boost your immune system, get the Max 35 or Max 14 or Cleanse. They're at different price points with different parts per million, but you take it the same way. Take a teaspoon a day, every day, swish in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds, swallow. What this will do is neutralize, improve your oral cavity, help the health of your oral pharynx, maintain your mucosal barrier, and help the health of your epithelial cells. This is really important, especially in the oral pharynx, because what this will do is help to boost up your immune system. And you're improving your oral cavity. So please go to my store, get the Max 35, Max 14, or Cleanse. Take it every day. If you're not feeling well, or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or 2 a day until everything's all clear, and then go back to your maintenance dose. I've been doing this since 2020, taking it every day. All right, so please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Slow down the aging process. And when you improve your oral cavity by taking Max 35, Max 14, or Cleanse, you're also helping with your cardiovascular health. How? Because with poor oral hygiene, you can have more inflammation, more plaque buildup at the vascular level. Poor oral hygiene can also lead to valvular disease. You don't want that. So it's really important to pay attention to me, slow down the aging process.
And this is why you see until now, they've been very, very careful not to act in a retaliatory way to provoke Iran further, and they have concentrated their effort on defending their airspace. Even with the support of some of their allies, like the British and the French, are operating in the region, they are limiting their mandate to simply shooting down drones and missiles coming towards the Gulf. And they do not have any appetite to engage directly, despite the fact that some fanatics in the American administration are encouraging them to do so, and they would like them to join the fight in full power. Gulf states unanimously, I think, now have taken the decision to stay out of it as much as possible. And I must add, I think this is probably the right decision given the fact, the size of Iran and the fact that they will have to live with the consequences for many, many years to come. And we know from experience in the past that the US is willing to cut and run at the first opportunity. We saw this in Iraq, in Afghanistan. Israel also has already diverted some of its attention to its own priorities, engaging in a war with Lebanon and leaving the fight for the Americans to finish that they instigated at the beginning. And the last, I think, the Gulf states want is to be engaged in a protracted conflict with Iran, which could easily take very ugly sectarian face and can drain both the Gulf states and the Iranians for many decades to come.
So the Gulf states, where you are, Sultan, there's a lot in your answer there. The relationship between the Americans and the Gulf states. We weren't sure whether we were going to get to speak to you today because of an air raid and you had to evacuate. This is one tiny little thing, but I guess as we look on from today and going forward, do you anticipate this is something big in this relationship? Does it change from here on out, or is this just management, get through this and we go back? Do you imagine the Gulf states going back to their as normal relationships with the US from here, or does something significant change about that relationship?
I think it'll get stronger.
Have they been left out to dry in some respects?
No. I think that if we are successful in this escapade, all right, which I believe we will be, the Middle East is going to radically change and be more aligned with Israel and with the United States. The Muslim countries are going to move closer to being integrated in a modern society for economic development.
A new crowd, which got to be like the first time you own. Well, as I said, the fact that they were not involved in the decision is a problem and have left a bitter taste, I think, across the Gulf. But also, Gulf states have been thinking and rethinking the dependency on the United States security provision ever since the Israeli attack on Qatar in June last year. And different countries took different courses of action. We saw the Saudi Arabia getting closer to Pakistan and signing a joint defense agreement with the Pakistanis, who, as you know, own a nuclear weapon, and that is seen as a way to strengthen their position within the region. The United Arab Emirates turned towards India and signed agreements of joint defense with the Indians. Maybe Qatar doubled down on the United States and signed an agreement that is only done with Qatar outside the NATO countries. So the thinking about the value of this relationship has been going on for some time. I think this latest episode will push them to consider further the sustainability of this dependency on the United States. It has been useful, I must say, in terms of protecting each country from its neighbors, including from the Gulf countries. And you could see when Qatar went under blockade by Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates and so on, the relationship with the US was very important to them. It was useful in defending Kuwait from the Iraq invasion. But it seems when it has come to the real critical issue in the Gulf, and that is the Iran politics and Iran versus Israel, they were literally, I think, being left out to defend for themselves.
We're just trying to map out where we're going here. We're talking about geopolitics, and I think rightfully so.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring in maybe the voices of the Iranian people, unless you have anything you want to immediately bring up. This operation was supposed to be about freeing the Iranian people from the regime. I want to play, if possible, some of those voices as they go about their daily life at the moment in Tehran. So stay with us. In the middle of Ramadan, of course, in the middle of a war that Donald Trump said was about them. Let's have a listen.
With the war, getting around the city has become difficult. Families are worried. Some people have left their homes and left the city. The work situation isn't good. We practically have no work at all. In the restaurant, we have almost no sales, no customers. Overall, the situation has gotten a bit worse.
But it was really bad before. People need to pay attention to what the economy was like in Iran before this latest conflict. It was terrible. They had high inflation, high unemployment. The regime was collapsing. They were protesting, and then the protesters were being killed. This is a great opportunity for democracy to take hold, and they have a flourishing economy. The sanctions will be lifted. The oil will be flowing. There'll be foreign direct investment into the country. Or do they want it? Or do they really want the IRGC to dig in and try to really fight the greatest power of human history, the United States military?
Every day we're afraid. Every day we come to work with fear. And when we say goodbye to our parents, we hug them tightly because it's possible we may not come back.
We're just doing our work and they're carrying out the strikes. But if you really look at it, they're not targeting residential areas. Everywhere I went that was hit, I saw it was a military site. We don't go near those places anyway. We keep our distance from them.
Adobe Acrobat Studio, your team's home base. Collaborate within a shared media space. Talk over team works. They did this design in the pretender, and I hope some finish the rest.
Whether you're a seasoned off-roader or getting your vehicle trail ready, Harbor Freight has rugged off-road equipment for every need, from winches.
Jared?
Yeah, so do you have any response to some of those concerns from the Iranian people that we just heard, Sultan?
Well, of course people are concerned.
Of
course people are concerned. You don't want people to be living in fear and be poverty and be in poverty, and you don't want that. I mean, people are human, But the thing is that you have to go through pain because a theocratic regime is unacceptable in modern society. It's unacceptable. You can't have it. Iran cannot have weapons of mass destruction, period. Period. Plus, they are funders of terrorism. They funded Hezbollah and Hamas. It's time to root out the funding and destroy them. It's that simple. And if the citizenry in Iran are smart, they would just stay away from the military, stay away from the IRGC, and let America kick ass.
You should expect in the context of war. My only concern is that as the Americans and the Israelis run out of targets list A, i.e. clear military bases, things may go wrong, and other targets, other infrastructure, particularly we saw already oil refineries, bridges, roads, airports will be targeted, and the casualty number will go up, as will the suffering of the Iranian civilian population.
Yeah, but who's at fault? Who's at fault? The IRGC. The IRGC needs to die. That's the result of war, honey. I mean, sorry. They could capitulate now, or there's going to be more destruction in the country. It's going to either surrender now or more destruction. Which one do you want?
Now, while we've got you, I'd like to sort of maybe look on a constructive and positive note. And I noticed that you've co-written an article published yesterday. It's on a website called thinkglobalhealth.org, and we can bring that up actually on my screen, and we can have a look at this article that argues that there is a potential off-ramp for the Iran war, a humanitarian one. You say that health diplomacy could create incentives for cooperation in the region, even if political engagement isn't possible. Could you explain a bit what you mean by that and tell us what health diplomacy is?
Well, there are common concerns in the region around health issues. I mean, it's always provided the base for dialogue. We all understand that diseases do not know borders, and they can cross from one country to the other. There's a lot of humanitarian will to support each other in the region, including with Iran, which has demonstrated itself many, many times before when Iran was struck by earthquakes and natural disasters. And I think that base is something that we should try and utilize, particularly between the Gulf states and Iran in the first step, but also to some extent between the American public and Iran. Within the American scene, as you know, within the administration, I think there are different views about this war. And the mainstream Republicans, who are probably represented at the moment by the Vice President Vance, I don't think they're happy with this war because they still think they have another chance to govern within the United States, and they would like to maintain their public support. While it is clear that maybe Trump and some of the hawkish people around him, they see this as his last possibility in power, and they would just like to do whatever they can do at the moment. So we are looking at the longer-term relationship between people to people, and I think the majority of the Americans are probably against this war. They don't understand exactly why Iranians are being attacked, and probably the same applies to the majority of the Iranian people because they don't understand why they've been targeted at this moment. So we're hoping that maybe through health and humanitarian actions, some common ground can be sustained to offer possibilities where for when the politics is right for people to engage at a slightly higher level.
Is there a motivation, though, for adversaries to cooperate on health and humanitarian issues if they can't really agree on some of the more fundamental issues?
Well, by definition, health.
You want to file free? Hit.
Reba here, back to tell you about Realtor.com. With over 500 active new listings monthly, you can find your dream home today. Well, in name.
Well, by definition, health and humanitarian are easier to tackle and easier to agree upon. And of course, even with Trump, you could see that he's put out a lot of statements trying to emphasize that the civilian casualties has been kept low. The attack that happened on the school has had a major impact on the discourse or on the narrative in which the Americans are discussing this subject. And you can imagine that if this continues and more hospitals are targeted directly or indirectly affected by the war, then there will be greater public opinion against this conflict. So the answer is yes. I think there is a ground, and there are many examples in the past where it was utilized to create space for political dialogue.
Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, we're having a lot of comments coming in, people just talking about the war generally, people saying, sadly, it's a lose-lose situation. Keeping the regime's power, the Iranian regime is bad for the people, but these attacks are obviously also bad for the people. No one knows what's coming after. Yeah, do you have anything you want to ask, Anthony?
No, the positivity, I think, is the thing that's bleeding off the page, and it's been great to get you to come along and bring that. If you haven't got anything more for Sultan, we might let you go, Sultan. It was really great of you to make the time under difficult circumstances today. We know you had to get on the move earlier to make yourself available after that was much appreciated any time, but particularly today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Myotrol. Myotrol will help with the gene expression to build muscle and maintain muscle. It has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans for the gene expression to help build muscle and maintain muscle. This is really important to take if you're 40 years of age or older, male or female. Make sure you do some resistance training. If you're an athlete, younger or older, you will also benefit by taking Myotrol. Resveratrol soaks up free radicals. It helps with youthful gene expression. Gets rid of cells that are in senescence. Boosts up the health of the mitochondria and improves your energy levels. Super important to take to slow down the aging process. Resveratrol also stacks well with C60 and helps with the basal layer for your skin. That's the reason why you look younger when you take resveratrol. Vitamin B complex. Vitamin B complex will help to rev up your cellular metabolism, protect your neurons, and help with the health of your mitochondria and boost up your energy levels. Super important to take if you're 40 years of age or older. All right, let's listen in to Fox News. This is chaos in Tehran, national security expert says.
And tonight, in another clear sign that Iran's evil regime is struggling to stay afloat, newly anointed supreme leader is nowhere to be found. Today, the Secretary of War announced that he was wounded and disfigured. Other reports claim that he's in a coma and isn't even aware of his new role. Here now with reaction, former Deputy National Security Advisor Victoria Coates. So great to have you this evening. Thank you for joining us. So what does your gut tell you is the situation with the supreme leader at the moment?
Well, Charlie, good to be with you too. I mean, what I'm seeing here is chaos in Tehran. There is really no strong decision making being made. They're kind of firing things off randomly. They're in this kind of weird dialogue with China, and nothing is progressing for them. So my guess is that Mojtaba Khamenei is indeed incapacitated, at least to some extent, if not dead, as was reported earlier today. So they have no central command and control. So they have no response to something like what President Trump did today, which was supposed to be impossible. You're not supposed to ever touch Kharg Island because this is going to destroy energy coming out of the Gulf. Guess what? He said, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to reach out and touch it. I'm going to destroy the military installations. And if I want to, I'll destroy the energy installations. So I don't really see much of a response out of Tehran.
So I'm glad you mentioned the Kharg Island thing because, you know, obviously that gives the U.S. some control, obviously, over the, the loading of ships, oil tankers at that end. But that doesn't necessarily get that tanker through the Strait of Hormuz. How does this strategy of taking control of Kharg Island wind up giving the U.S. the ability to provide safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, it's a multi-pronged strategy, Charlie, because what we also have is we have what's called the Petroline pipeline between Abqaiq and Yanbu. That's across the Saudi Arabian Peninsula. You can run up to 5 million barrels a day across that. And what we're seeing is all the tankers are going into the Red Sea, which suggests that the Houthi have stood down. And we're going to start to move a whole lot of energy through that pipeline. And there's a corresponding natural gas pipeline with it as well. So it's a little bit clunkier than what you'd like to see, just loading up a tanker and running it through. But this is a way to run the energy out. That means we don't need the strait as much as the Iranians do.
So when you mentioned the Houthis, obviously there are some ships that are getting out that are, that Iran wants to get out. And I'm assuming that the Iranian government is getting paid for those shipments. At what point do the payments to, say, the Houthis or Hamas or Hezbollah, at what point does that money dry up and we start seeing those proxies for Iran walk away?
It's drying up right now, and we've heard nothing from Hamas. We've heard only words from the Houthi. We've seen a little bit out of Hezbollah, but Israel is responding very, very strongly. So in a way, if you look at it, mining the Strait of Hormuz is suicidal for Iran because that's where they're still running some oil out to China. That's their last revenue coming in. And the economic problems that they had that caused those massive demonstrations in December, they haven't fixed them. They've gotten worse. So for them, they're making their ultimate predicament even more dire than it was 2 weeks ago.
So what can you do about a ship that Iran is allowed to pass through unmolested, that's filled with oil, that's headed to China? What can you do about that after it's gotten to the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, if it's sanctioned, like any of the rest of the shadow fleet, we can interdict it. So that's a process. That's something that you do. But we could, yes.
I mean, if we interdicted a ship that was headed to China, that would be pretty high stakes.
Well, we've done some others. We've done some in the Indian Sea, so it's not unprecedented and it's perfectly legal. So we'll see what happens.
So let me ask you this: one of the things that I'm always concerned about with Iran is this sort of Armageddon button. At some point, they have nothing left to lose. They truly have nothing left to lose, and they do something catastrophic that not only destroys it destroys themselves, but it also destroys the rest of the world. How worried are you about that? How would they do that? Or do you think they've already tried to do that?
I don't think they have an Armageddon button yet, Charlie, and I think that's why President Trump is taking this action so that they don't. I think he agrees that they would be far too likely to push that button if they had it. So what he's doing right now is trying to defang that, trying to negate all of that risk to the American people. And that's what's so important here. This is a risk against us. Today is Cut's Day. That's their Death to America Day. For 47 years, they've been celebrating that with chants of death to America, with military parades in Tehran. And so I think that's the paradigm he's trying to break and say, we're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to let them get to that Armageddon moment.
And I guess one of the worries that we might have is that Iran might do something to actually destroy those oil depots on Kharg Island. Victoria Coates, thank you so much for breaking this all down for us.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com and get the heirloom barley. This will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. Take this every day, and this will help with your immune system, your endocrine system, help with your joints, your brain function, your cardiovascular health. You'll recover from a workout quicker. Super important to take every day. This is a month's supply. You mix it with soft foods, filter water, a smoothie, or even with milk, but take it every day. Also, Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients, It has a very comprehensive compound profile shown on the screen here. These are the ingredients that you need to slow down the aging process and improve your longevity. This will improve your cellular metabolism. This will improve your cardiovascular health and your musculature, your brain function. It'll slow down the aging process. You'll be able to improve your immune system and your endocrine system. You'll have a steady burn of energy throughout the day. You'll be able to control your A1C levels. This is very powerful stuff. Take it every day. Slow down the aging process. Global shipping disruptions. Hundreds of Greek commercial vessels stranded. This was 59 minutes ago from Al Jazeera.
A ship ablaze in the Gulf, filmed by a Greek merchant mariner on his phone. This is the danger facing the crews of about 300 commercial ships trapped in the Gulf, because Iran won't allow the vessels to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. There are also reports the crucial waterway is mined. We spoke to a Greek officer on board a tanker that loaded crude oil in Iraq before the war broke out. It's now been forced to wait. For security reasons, we've withheld his real name and location.
Every morning we heard I'll read it because it's hard to hear. Every morning we heard explosions. This morning I heard at least 10. We saw at least 2 missiles. We see fighter planes, missiles, fires blazing. There are 24 of us confined to this boat. We cannot even go on deck. We are in an enclosed space and we are trying to keep our minds busy. Because if we think about what is going on, we will panic.
For now, the crew has food and water, but if the conflict drags on, they will run out, and there are few tugboats big enough to resupply them in the open sea. The choking off of oil supplies raises the risk of economic hardship worldwide. The vast majority of traded goods, 90%, is transported by ship, making maritime transport crucial to the global economy. If ships cannot move freely and safely, then consumer prices and energy prices increase all around the world. The Greek-owned fleet transports a fifth of all the world's trade by sea, and almost a third of the world's crude oil, making Piraeus the beating heart of the shipping industry. Ship managers here say oil prices and hiring rates for very large crude carriers, or VLCCs, shot up even before the strait was closed.
Price of the freight was 3 to 6 times higher than the prevailing market price before the commencement of the war. While a VLCC was getting something like 120,000 per day, then after that they got 600,000 per day, 570,000 per day. Dollars.
That kind of profit drives a demand for crews to take risks.
Some companies send their crews into war zones for up to 5 times the salary. Some don't agree and advise them not to. Some companies ask their crews to sign a statement. We call it a deal paper, saying they are aware of the dangers and are going in willingly. How willing they are is an open question.
Some say no, but they're easily replaced. In a world of supply and demand, seafarers are putting a price on their lives. John Tsaropoulos, Al Jazeera, Piraeus, Greece.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. This is 1,000 times more potent than vitamin C as an antioxidant. Very strong. Take a teaspoon a day every day, preferably on an empty stomach in the morning, but take it every day and you're going to slow down the aging process. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. You can get an extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, and MCT coconut oil. But take it every day, really important. It has to be C60, has to be suspended in an oil for proper absorption. Now, this will help to improve the health of your mitochondria. You'll have more energy. Your tissues will perform better. Your organ systems will perform better. You'll reduce plaque formation because you're soaking up free radicals at the vascular level. You're going to help with brain function and the health of your neurons. You're going to help with your endocrine system and your immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the C60, take a teaspoon a day every day. And like I said, you can stack it with a lot of the different products that I have, like Boomer Boost, resveratrol, the turmeric, the ashwagandha, the lignans, even the Max 35, Max 14 or Cleanse. And when you stack them in it, what you're doing is that you're supercharging the anti-aging process. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the C60. C60 also improves the basal layer of your skin. That's the reason why you look younger when you take it. So please go to my store and get the C60. Take a teaspoon a day every day. I've been doing this protocol since 2016. That's the end of my broadcast. Oil markets are going to be volatile going into the trading session on Monday. So we'll continue watching, and I'll give you my perspective in real time of how to manage through the crisis. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.